Greetings, family. So we're just gonna go right in. We're gonna talk today about Kevin Hart. Just looking at an article today in MiddleEastEye.net. Kevin Hart's debut Egypt show cancelled after quote-unquote Afrocentric views controversy. So the article saying US comedian Kevin Hart's debut show in Egypt has been cancelled following an outpouring of anger in the country over his past comments in support of Afrocentrism. Our Productions, the Egyptian event management company behind Hart's tour, cited local logistic issues in a Facebook post on Monday which announced the cancellation. It is with a heavy heart that we share with you, due to local logistical issues, the cancellation of our Kevin Hart event, the company said. The American comedian was set to perform in Cairo, Egypt on Tuesday. The company said it was working with the Tickets March team to refund customers in the shortest possible time. Hart faced a flood of criticism in the Arab world's most populous country for promoting Afrocentrism. The movement seeks to promote the role Black people played in history and the creation of Western civilization. Hart's critics, however, accused him of distorting history and robbing Arabs of their claim to the country's ancient past, saying he claimed that Black Africans were once the kings of Egypt. We must teach our children the true history of Black Africans when they were kings in Egypt and not just the era of slavery that is cemented by education in America. Do you remember the time when we were kings? He allegedly stated, though it's unclear where the remarks originated. A hashtag calling for Hart's show to be cancelled or boycotted became one of the top trending topics on social media in Egypt in December. One Twitter user said Afrocentrists want to steal and attribute Egypt's civilization to Africans and tell modern Egyptians that we are occupying Egypt from them. We must all participate in the campaign to cancel Kevin Hart's concert. Many Egyptians also criticized Hart's financial backing of an Afrocentric animation series by the company Black Sands Entertainment, which some have accused of blackwashing ancient Egyptian history. Modern Egypt was at various points in history part of the Greek and Roman empires and was later ruled by the Islamic caliphates. The country is an ethnically and religiously diverse nation of more than 100 million. Egyptians even claim ancestry from Circassians and Turks going back to the Ottoman Empire. There are also Egyptians of Black Nubian descent. Some schools of thought claim that Coptic Christians, who number between 10 and 15% of Egyptians' population, are the most direct descendants of ancient Egyptians. Alright family, let's go in. So, what they're pretty much saying here is they canceled Kevin Hart's concert because he claimed, again, this had nothing to do with the concert, and there's no direct connection to Kevin Hart in this comment, right? They're saying that they overheard, or I don't know how they're saying this is him because the article says there is no direct connection to him and the statement. However, they found it so alarming that the statement was made that Black people were once the kings and rulers of ancient Egypt that they wanted to cancel the show. They don't want Kevin Hart in their country. This is a problem. This is a big problem, right? So first of all, let's go in. Why do they feel it problematic for him to say that, right? Is the current population of Egypt reflective of the population of ancient Egypt? Well, let's take a look. The Muslim conquest of Egypt, led by the army of Emir ibn al-As, took place between 639 and 646 AD and was overseen by the Rashidun Caliphate. It ended the 7-century-long period of Roman reign over Egypt that began in 30 BC. Byzantine rule in the country had been shaken, as Egypt had been conquered and occupied for a decade by the Sasanian Empire in 618 to 29 before being recovered by the Byzantine Empire Heraclius. The Caliphate took advantage of Byzantine's exhaustion and captured Egypt 10 years after its reconquest by Heraclius. During the mid-630s, the Romans had already lost the Levant and its Ghassanid allies in Arabia to the Caliphate. The loss of the Province of Egypt and the defeat of the Byzantine armies severely weakened the empire, resulting in further territorial losses in the centuries to come. Alright, so this is saying right there that between 639 and 646 AD, the Muslims entered into Egypt. So the modern population of Egypt has no relation to the ancient population of Egypt. They came after the Romans. Who came after the Persians? Who came after the Greeks? There was numerous people who conquered, and the original population left. They didn't stay there because they were conquered. They were either destroyed or enslaved, or they left and abandoned the place, right? So, there's numerous accounts. We have Herodotus, who describes the ancient Egyptians as Ethiopians, and them and the Ethiopians as being one race. This conversation about the modern Egyptians and that Kevin Hart is making statements that they're not part of. Well, first of all, he didn't say that, and second of all, if he did, he would be accurate to say so. They have nothing to do with the ancient Egyptians. If you look at the carvings of the ancient Egyptians, just take a look at Khufu, the man who built the Great Pyramid. The man was black, right? So this is evident, right? They DNA tested mummies and stuff like that. They matched the modern day black people. So I don't see why this is a problem for anyone to make that statement, right? Not to mention that the people who currently reside there, due to their beliefs, when they came there, they didn't respect the monuments of the ancient Egyptians. They dug off all the marble off the pyramids and built their mosque and thing with it. So why is this a problem? I don't really get it, right? If we take a look at the neighboring populations, the Nubians who interacted with the ancient Egyptians, they're black, right? Do you know something here? It says actually here, some bit of history here. In the summer of 642, Amir ibn Alas sent an expedition to the Christian kingdom of Nubia, which bordered Egypt to the south. So first of all, they're trying to invade a Christian kingdom when they're not supposed to be invading anywhere that's under the word of the book. But anyhow, the same people who invaded Egypt are coming to invade the Christian kingdom of Nubia, which bordered Egypt to the south, under the command of his cousin Uqba ibn Nafi as a preemptive raid to announce the new arrival of the new rulers of Egypt. Uqba ibn Nafi, who later made a great name for himself as the conqueror of Africa. Alright? You hear this now? The conqueror of Africa. So this is what was going on at the time. These men are coming in not from Africa to say that they were conquering Africa. Alright? Same way how they conquered Egypt, they would have tried to conquer what? Nubia. And then today we would have been having the conversation, the ancient Nubians weren't black. Right? But because of what I'm about to read, no one can say that. Alright. Conqueror of Africa, and led his horses to the Atlantic. Had an unhappy experience in Nubia, so sad for him. No pitched battle was fought, but there were only skirmishes and haphazard engagements, the type of warfare in which the Nubians excelled. Of course they're going to say this, but the reality is that they tried to fight these people and they got broke. They got beat up, right? They were skillful archers, and subjected the Muslims to a merciless barrage of arrows, resulting in 250 Muslims losing their eyes in the engagement. They blinded them. They took out their eyes. So whoever was living in Egypt at the time, when they came over to Egypt, it wasn't the ancient Egyptians. They couldn't have been, because the ancient Egyptians had many skirmishes with the Nubians. Sometimes they won, sometimes the Nubian won, because they all could deal with the same kind of warfare. But these guys couldn't handle them. So there was no way they were living in Egypt at that time, the actual ancient Egyptians, right? Hear what happened once again. I'm going to read it to you again, all right? They had an unhappy experience in Nubia. No pitched battle was fought, but there were only skirmishes and haphazard engagements, the type of warfare in which the Nubians excelled. Again, undermining the Nubians because they could deal with full-fledged war too. They were skillful archers and subjected the Muslims to a merciless barrage of arrows, resulting in 250 Muslims losing their eyes in the engagement. The Nubian cavalry displayed remarkable speed, even more so than the Muslim cavalry, not my words. The Nubians would strike hard and then vanish before the Muslims could ever recover and counterattack. The hit and run raids took their toll on the Muslim expedition. Uqba reported, not one of the Nubians, Uqba reported that to Amir, who ordered Uqba to withdraw from Nubia, terminating the expedition. Alright, so let's get real now. The only reason that the Nubians even existed to this day was because all those other people couldn't fight them, right? And if the ancient Egyptians could fight the Nubians, then fighting is not what conquered the ancient Egyptians, period. I'm going to have to repeat that for some people, because this is the third time now. If none of these people could beat the Nubians, and the ancient Egyptians used to fight back and forth and beat the Nubians, then there's no way fighting is what conquered ancient Egypt, period. See? Because fighting couldn't conquer Nubia. So the people that all these people conquered up in Egypt weren't the ancient Egyptians. Something happened to the ancient Egyptians, other than them getting beat up and taken out of Egypt. Alright? So I'm not here to school people, but we're talking about Kevin Hart here, right? So I'm giving a little bit of background, but in the future times, I'll give you a full-fledged 12-course meal of history so that you can fully understand this thing and how ridiculous it is, all right? But the reality is, the ancient Egyptians themselves, right, they took into certain practices, and one of those practices were they loved foreign women. The kings of ancient Egypt, the rulers, they loved the foreign women then. So they were going and they were having children with rulers and such from other places. So long before people conquered them, the ruling classes of ancient Egypt became mixed race. But don't let that get things twisted to say that they didn't originate as black people. They're in Africa. Morocco, Mauritania, all those North African places were originally black. That's a fact. And if you, like I said, in future times, I'll give you the 12-course meal. But don't get it twisted thinking that they weren't black. They were black, but they're in the Mediterranean is right there. So mixing was going on for a long time. Sure, but not for millions of years. For thousands of years, yes. Not for millions. But for millions of years, black people were there. Humanity originated in East Africa. Southeast Africa? No, Northeast Africa. So how is it possible that North Africans could look the way that they're looking today? It's not making no sense. Right? We don't have to argue these things. Right? Anybody who has done their research knows these facts. So the fact that Egypt today would say they want to take Kevin Hart and tell him he can't come to the country because there's a reason for that. Right? There is a political reasoning for that. And in the same vein that people criticize America, and to a lesser degree Spain and France for their colonial actions in the Americas, right? And to some degree they take accountability of it, right? They teach it in his, yes, they came over here as, they want to say pilgrims, but as colonials, and they conquered the Americas. In the same vein, the Muslim world, the Islam world have to tell the truth. They weren't born, they didn't originate in North Africa, right? If you follow the truth of the history of the religion, they started in Saudi Arabia. Mecca, that's the place where they go for their pilgrimage. Mecca, where the Kaaba is, right? And they left from Arabia and went through North Africa. But the evidence of it is there because they entered into what? They entered into Spain. They entered into Portugal. But what happened to them there? What happened in Spain and Portugal? They had a revolution. And the Christian inhabitants of Spain and Portugal decided they weren't going to have it no more. And they liberated themselves from the invaders. If they didn't do that today, then the argument would be that the Arabs are native to Spain and Portugal and that they weren't invaders. But the king and queen of Spain and Portugal, they weren't taking that. And they said, no, you guys thank you very much for your time here, but now you have to go. But North Africa hasn't done that. And that is why today, the Egyptians can look at Kevin Hart, who is a descendant of ancient Egypt, of the people who built the pyramids, and tell this man, hey, you can't even come to our country to perform because you're making such a statement, right? Because of the political impact it could have. They don't want Black America, the Black Caribbean, Black Central America, all of those people who were taken away in the transatlantic slave trade. They don't want those people to say, hey, wait a second, all that place in North Africa there, Egypt and Mauritania and Morocco and all that land that's inhabited by people who are not African. How is it? Wait a second, perhaps that's where they took us from. Right. And when we say African, we mean African by origin, by biological origin. Right? So right, when we're taking a look at North Africa, right, it's no different, right? The narrative that North African DNA is the DNA of these non-biologically African people, right? And it is ridiculous. And if we check it historically, we're going to find out that it's what we call a colonial narrative, colonial discourse, right? It's a narrative that's used to overlay history to bypass the fact that some colonization had occurred, right? So we can't forget the fact that Africa is the home of Black people And no matter where you go in Africa, the first human being that was there, it was a black person. If they didn't have the political flag and the structures of Eurocentrics, then that's fine. But as was stated earlier, the Arab left Saudi Arabia and went through North Africa and entered into Spain and Morocco. And Spain and Morocco threw them off, but North Africa did not. And in North Africa to this very day, they're enslaving the black man. White supremacy reigns and thrives in the Muslim world. Sad to say, but it's the truth. From Saudi Arabia to Iran to Beirut to Lebanon to Morocco to Morant, it's the same story. They're enslaving black people. They have black people doing whatever they want them to do. I'm not the one generating these. You can Google it, or you can search it on YouTube, and you're gonna see it evident, right, that these things are occurring, right? And I'm not even here to discuss those things. I'm just here to draw some attention to the fact that these things are occurring. And that history of black human beings in Africa who gave civilization to the human race is being belittled when people now are saying Kevin Hart can't come there because he's saying these things. Why are you so angry that he's saying that? Why does it offend you so much that he's making this statement, which is true, scientifically, historically, sociologically, however you wanna slice this thing? And again, that he allegedly stated. There's no record that he really stated these things. But if he stated this, right, whether or not he stated it, it's true. It's true. The current inhabitants, the majority, right? Let me be descriptive here. The majority of the current inhabitants of Egypt today are not the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians. Fact. And I'll add this. I will add this. The majority of the ancestors of the transatlantic slave trade are the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians. This is fact. Whether we want to go by history, whether we want to go by the Bible, however you want to slice it, they built the pyramids. Fact. That's their home. So Kevin Hart saying that, I'll tell you this. It should be offensive to Black America that they want to shut him out and shut him down for saying that. An apology needs to be issued. Furthermore, it really needs to be analyzed by Black people, right? Should we be allowing anyone to have access over the monuments in Egypt? The skeletons they're digging up. Whose ancestors are those, right? Whose ancestors are they? Do a DNA test and find out. Do they match them? Right. And the people who do match them, they should have some say in what happens. Because you're digging up somebody's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother and talking about how it's your home. And they're not supposed to talk about whose home it is. Birthright is going to come into this. Right? Right. So as we mentioned, political status. So all of this stuff, right, it is put into this mixed bag of animosity towards Kevin Hart. Why? Because you people are getting in your feelings about this. Had you said nothing, because guess what? Even though we're making these statements, we're still not coming for you, eh? Nobody has come over there. I don't see no group of Black people coming over there saying, hey, get out of here, this is ours. But when you really check what's going on, let me reiterate what happened in Spain, right? The Muslims, they spread from Saudi Arabia and went across North Africa and entered into Spain and Portugal. They also entered into France and all them places, but Spain and Portugal were the main centers. What happened? Didn't they conquer them? Didn't they have a big Spanish Inquisition to make sure there was not even a trace of them left back in their country? Right, they kicked them all out, they expelled them. Right, so again, if they didn't do that, today, they would be treating it just like Egypt and saying they're the natives of Spain and the natives of Portugal. I'm sorry, but you're not. Just like how you invaded North Africa, you invaded Portugal and Spain. You were invaders there, you're invaders there. I'm not judging the invading. I'm not saying that you're not human beings because you invaded. I'm saying let's be historically accurate. That's not your homeland. It's not your biological, genetic, ancestral homeland, if we want to be descriptive. Sure, you've been there for a few hundred years. I ain't saying that you're not modern Egyptians. I'm saying you're not ancient Egyptians. Facts. Your great-great-great-great-grandmother didn't build those pyramids. The sculptures aren't a reflection of your great-great-great-great-granddaddy. You know what I'm saying? You guys were in Arabia. And today I'm not going to speak on the history of Arabia. But if you want to know, you can research it. That's your history. Right? Embrace that history. Why is it so important to you to embrace and big up somebody else's history? Aren't you proud of yours? You're not proud of what was going on in Arabia 1,000 years ago? I thought you said Abraham built the Kaaba. So why aren't you big up the Kaaba? You have to go big up the pyramids. Isn't the Kaaba great? I think it's great. Right? So admire that, man. Right? And let the people whose great-great-great-granddaddy built the pyramids, let them behold that. And honor that and know themselves as the right. Why do you want to take somebody else's self-identity? The same thing you're bothering about. Did you want to steal our identity? And then, well, do a little bit more digging. Do a little bit more digging. And you're going to find out the same thing that you're trying to do. That's what you're doing to other people. Is what you're doing. Take a DNA test. Take a DNA test. Read some books. And know yourself. EJ, we don't want nothing from you. Seeing? Kevin Hart, big you up. Bro, come to the black world and we're going to support you anywhere you are. You know what I mean? And we'll talk the things. Obviously, we're the ones who built it. And we're going to build it again. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to build it there. That's just land.